So you've got a brand voice, or you have some brand voice characteristics, or even just a brand personality. Great. That already puts you 50% ahead of other companies. The problem is, what are you supposed to do with that now? And if this question has ever popped into your head, don't worry, you are not alone. The struggle is real. You've got tons of content to write, you've got campaigns to get up and running, tests that you need to implement, and you have to keep your brand voice consistent across so many different touch points so that whenever your audience reads or interacts with your content, no matter where they are or what you're talking about, they go, yeah, I know, that's company X. Maintaining that consistency in brand characteristics and personality across all these different customer touch points is so crucial because it's what helps strengthen your customers' brand awareness and reinforce their recall of your brand, because now they know when they see your logo or your visuals or your brand colors, they know also what you sound like. And while all this sounds good and fine, applying your brand voice to multiple different customer touchpoints, types of content, audiences, and channels is actually really super hard. And marketers, experimenters, and even some brand experts have trouble with applying and adapting their brand's personality to their different customer touchpoints. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Hi everyone, my name is Anna and welcome to today's lesson where I'm going to help walk you through some guidelines to adjust your brand's tone to different audiences and different channels. As mentioned in another CXL Feed video, there are 4 building blocks to building a strong brand voice. Personality, which is what your brand sounds like. Tone, which is the mood your brand is in right now. Rhythm, which is how fast or slow your brand talks. And its patterns, and vocabulary, which is the specific words you use to help drive consistency. So today, we're focusing on your brand's tone, which, as you mentioned, it's one of the hardest things for people to pin down. And that's because tone is best described as what kind of mood or attitude your brand is at the time of writing. So while your brand personality characteristics will be consistent, your brand's tone will vary depending on the context surrounding it. And there are 3 factors that we need to think about this context. 1 is the audience who you're talking to. 2 is the topic that you're talking about or what. And 3 is the platform or channel that you're using to communicate with your audience, the where. Let me give you an example. Take a look at this character over here. If you've ever seen an episode of The Simpsons or even just know about it from pop culture, you're likely to know that Homer is generally considered to be slow. He's not the sharpest tool in the drawer. He's also a bit lady. He's irritating. He gets angry easily. But at the same time, he's a kind, loving husband and father. And he'll always try to do the right thing, even if he doesn't always get it right. So this is what we call, for the sake of this exercise, his brand personality. However, the way he talks changes depending on who he's talking to and where he's talking to them. For example, when he's talking with his boss in his boss's office, when he's talking to his neighbor at a picnic, or when he's speaking before a judge in court. Think about these different situations where we find the same character in different situations, how the emotions, that way of talking, even their body language changes to match. Or even take one of the previous audiences, say his boss, and put that into a different channel, a log cabin in the woods versus his boss's office, and the tone would change again. So thinking about your brand voice as a character, adapting to all of these different situations can be super helpful for helping us grasp these changes that we need to make to adjust the tone for different audiences and different channels. Because while a certain tone of voice is fine when talking to his boss in his boss's office, it would feel way too formal if they were sitting together having a drink in a log cabin, or it would feel way too formal for talking to his neighbor at a picnic. But likewise, talking to his neighbor at a picnic was not the same tone of voice that he used when he's presenting to a judge in court. But let's take a look at a real-world example from IBM. IBM's brand personality is overall intelligent and confident. And we can see that coming strongly through their website. But IBM doesn't sound 100% the same 100% of the time. For example, when they're talking about their quantum computing breakthroughs, they're more formal and technical for their highly sophisticated audience. So the channel they're using is the website, the audience, sophisticated, and the topic is serious. But when they're talking about authentication and security, they have a broader, slightly less sophisticated audience. So their tone is friendlier and less technical to help them feel more approachable while still being intelligent and confident. All this is already happening on the one website. Same channel, different topic, different audience. Likewise, when you take a look at some of the recent posts on social media. This post talks excitedly about some recent mentions that they'd had. So we have a different channel now, LinkedIn, different audience, much broader and less sophisticated, and a different topic altogether, media mentions. But even when the channel and the audience is the same, when the topic is different, the tone changes again. So this post, for example, is a lot more calm, thoughtful, and reserved in honor of Martin Luther King Day. So we can see clearly how IBM is adapting their brand personality, intelligent and confident, to different topics, audiences, and channels. As mentioned earlier, what the tone of voice boils down to is who you're talking to, what you're talking about, and where you're talking to, and so where that conversation is happening. For example, are you excited because you're announcing a new funding round? Are you deeply reflected on some changes that are happening in the market? Are you speaking to a US-based audience or a European-based one? And that's what we're going to get to the bottom of right now. All of this can be so confusing, no matter whether you're a marketer, as I mentioned earlier, you're a marketer, an experimenter, or even someone who's working with brand, or you're a copywriter or a content writer. All these different changes can be so confusing. So this is what we're going to get to the bottom of right now. We're going to together create some basic guidelines for your brand's terms, so you or anyone else who needs to write for your company can help preserve what's unique about the brand personality through your communications, but also while adjusting your tone for the different topics, audiences, and channels that you're going to need to write for. There are so many different ways that you can do this, but we're going to focus on one that's as simple as possible. What you need to have on hand to get started, you need to have your brand characteristics. These are the 3 to 4 that make up your brand personality. You need to have your ICP or audience data. So that could be as broad as business region acronyms or audience titles and types, or even just their level of awareness, if they're problem aware, solution aware, or high aware with most intent. You're also going to need the channels, a list of all the different channels that you're using to communicate with your audience or the types of content. And you also need the 4 dimensions of tone of voice. The 4 dimensions of tone of voice are a sliding scale, and they can help you figure out how to adjust your brand's personality to align with the different channels and audiences that you're talking to. Now, I looked at so many different ways of organizing this, but to put all of these different factors into a single table is really difficult to do, and you end up with a massive monster of a table, which is really hard to control and make sense of. So I split the work into 2 separate tables, but they're really easy to fill out, and then walk you through them right now. So the first table we're going to look at is just fleshing out your brand personality characteristics. So that is what we mean by those 3 to 4 qualifying traits and how they reflect your brand. We're going to take each one of those 3 to 4 traits, write a brief description as to how they tie to your brand, and that could be to your brand's vision, mission, the narrative or the brand story, and then add in some examples of what to do or what not to do to support these characteristics. And if you don't know what your brand personality is or your brand characteristics are, there's another CXL Feeds video that talks about exactly that. So I recommend you check it out when you can. But here's a couple of examples what a filled out table like this could look like for you. Here's an example of one done by SEMrush. And here's one from social media management tool Heyoka. So it's not meant to be too extensive. It's meant to be fairly simple and quick. It's easy exercise for you to do. Take the characteristic, describe how it's connected to your brand, and then give a couple of examples of how to do it and how not to do it. But once you have this table filled out, it's going to give you a super clear idea of how your brand's personality is being expressed through words. The second table you're going to create now is tying all those brand characteristics to your different audiences and channels. Remember, our tone varies depending on who we're talking to, what we're talking about, and where we're talking to people. So that's what this table is going to help you unpack in a practical way. And the simplest way that I come to do it is to start with your content type. That's, for example, your website, social media, landing pages, email newsletters. This is the topic, but also the where, the context of where that content appears. Next to it, you have the audience, who the content is for. Next to that, we have the goal of the piece of content. So what we want the audience to do, think, or feel based on the content that they're interacting with. And then we have our tone. So this is how you're adapting the characteristics in previous table that we saw, table 1, using the sliding scale to help you get a feel for how to communicate those different messages. And last but not least, if you can add some examples in, this is going to make the table a lot more accessible, easy for you to use and understand, as well other people on your team or in your company. Here's a great example of a table filled out by Sprout Social. And it's a great way, as I mentioned, to make your brand's tone applications really practical. As mentioned earlier, go on ahead and define first the different types of content that people interact with, what kind of audience they expect will interact with each of those different pieces of content. Alongside that, and clarify what the goal is, what they really, in an ideal world, what they'd like each member of their audience to do as a result of interacting with each piece of content. And so then they've highlighted how this impacts their brand's tone. So what they need to do to change the tone while keeping their brand personality consistent, but to help serve different audiences in a different content type and channel. But like with everything in marketing and experimentation, we need to track and measure our efforts. Make sure we're always trying to do the right thing and we're always going up into the right. So, and with changing markets and changing times, it's something that's really important to do. So I recommend you keep tabs on what you're doing with your brand's tone of voice by looking at these 4 things. You can do it once a month if you're publishing, if you're a larger company, publishing a ton of content across multiple channels all the time. But even once a quarter is great if you have a smaller team and you're publishing a little bit less volume content. So what we need to do to make sure that as we keep tabs on whether our brand's tone of voice is working or not. First thing to do is to check response and engagement rates on posts, on pieces of content, emails, things like that. What are engagement rates? What are people commenting? How are they responding to things? And as well to perform a sentiment analysis. So a lot of social media or VOC listening tools can help you do both of these things. You can also simply collect audience engagement from the comments and run them through ChatGPT or another AI to collect overall sentiments and see how people are reacting to the different types of content. So based on the emotions, their tone of voice and how they respond is going to give you a hint, give you an indication as to how your brand's tone of voice is impacting them. Then, based on what you've learned from the sentiment analysis and reviewing the comments, update your existing tables, table 1 and table 2, based on what you've learned. So to get your tone into alignment and then measure again. So to recap what we've covered today, we've covered what tone is, how to think about it. We've also covered how to create guidelines for varying your tone while still being true to your brand's personality. So that no matter who you're talking to, what you're talking about, or where you're talking to them, you can preserve your brand's unique personality. Thanks for watching. Is there any other copywriting topics you'd like to learn about? Leave a comment below. We're going to touch with CXL, and the next video might be about that.